Meet the Avatar 1-2. This all-new electric sedan has an advanced driver assistance system from Huawei, as well as enough power to play tug-of-war with the moon.
Avatar is a premium brand for Chinese automaker Chang'an, and it is priced as such. An entry-level 1-2 sells for $41,000 while our top-spec dual-motor GT trim comes in at $54,000.
Avatar made a real splash with the styling of their first model, the Avatar 1-1, a coupe SUV with flying buttresses. The Avatar 1-2 isn't trying to mimic a mid-engine sports car, but it's still bold in its own way. The front-end styling, I think, is both menacing and elegant at the same time. It reminds me of a villain from an anime series. And I don't mean like the mini-boss that they meet in the first season. I mean the demon lord that they don't fight till like season 3.
This Demon Lord is thick, too. The 1-2 looks big in photos, but it looks downright huge in person. At a hair over 5 meters in length, it's mere millimeters shorter than a Porsche Panamera, but a bit taller. Unlike a lot of slab-sided EVs, however, I think the 1-2 wears its size with surprising grace. Whereas some of its competitors look like they're stretching upward in an awkward attempt to imitate an SUV, the 1-2 just looks sleek.
The sleekness can be emphasized with the optional digital side view mirrors. That's right, it's a camera-based side view mirror system. This kind of system has been available in other markets for a while now, including Japan, for example, but it's just now making its way to China. The advantages of this, unlike certain options like a yoke-style steering wheel, whose advantages are dubious at best, are pretty obvious. This thing reduces aerodynamic drag. The question remains, however, does that small reduction in aerodynamic drag come at the cost of usability? What really makes the design of the Avatar 1-2 look so hefty is this rear end, which seems to be carved from a single giant chunk of metal. The truth isn't very far off. You see, when people complained that the Avatar 1-1's rear window was too small, Avatar said, "We hear you." Then they proceeded to completely delete the rear window on the Avatar 1-2. Now, you really have to rely on the digital rearview mirror inside. The Avatar 1-2 might not have flying buttresses like a mid-engine sports car, but it does have some sports car-inspired design elements, such as this electronically deployable rear spoiler. I'm not gonna lie though, looks a little small on this design.
The 1-2's controversial styling does have its advantages, including a large rear opening. Actual cargo space isn't especially impressive though, at just 350 liters. Thankfully, the 1-2 also has a 65-liter frunk. Open the electronically operated doors of the Avatar 1-2, and you'll be greeted by a design language called Gentle Tech. Its minimalist approach results in a space that's almost completely free of ornamentation. The dash is a single monolithic chunk of leather, uninterrupted by any pattern, let alone wood, plastic, or metal trim pieces.
What few buttons you will find on the interior of this car are definitely on the subtle side. Let's start with the most subtle, and that's the ones on the door. You've got two logos here, the purpose of which are pretty obvious. This one is used to lock and unlock your doors. This one is used to lock your windows. Where, however, is the button for opening and closing the electronically operated doors? That would be this super subtle little thing right here, this rectangular piece. If I double tap, there goes our door. Shut that so we can get to the other row of physical buttons. That's down here below your center screen. These silver trim buttons are used to control your front and rear windows for left and right side, as well as your 360-degree camera and automatic parking. With so few buttons to distract you, your attention is instead drawn to the screens inside of this car, of which there are very, very many. The central screen is 15.6 inches and is powered by the Huawei Harmony OS. Behind that is an even larger 35.4-inch 4K display, which is used as your instrument cluster, as well as a couple of other things that we'll get to in a bit. Above that, your digital rearview mirror.
If you pay the extra $1,600 USD for the digital side view mirrors, the long screen is flanked by two small displays.
Between the mood lighting and all these screens, feels like being wrapped in the warm embrace of an LED womb. The Harmony OS remains one of my absolute favorite operating systems simply because it works. The menus are precise and uncluttered, and even the self-developed map app called Petal Maps works pretty well. It also has a function that I haven't seen before. If you hit this button right here on the screen, it will pull up a representation of what places you could reach from your current position using the current range of the car. It's not really useful in daily life, but it's kind of cool to see what you could get to with your current range. I've changed it to light mode so you can better appreciate this 35.4-inch horizontal screen up here on the dashboard. As I mentioned already, this is used for your instrument cluster all the way here on the left, but in the middle are 6 different cards that you can customize. You can change both the, go to the menu, position of those cards by dragging and dropping like you would on the page of your cell phone. But you can also delete or change some of the ones on the screen. Some of them are permanent, like your current electrical efficiency, your range, and things like that. But some of them, like the time, for example, I can get rid of that, and I can put back into the media. It's a very cool system, and it also does a thing where if only the driver is in the car, the cards, they kind of tilt towards the driver. But if the passenger is in the car, they then tilt towards the passenger. If you've got a driver and a passenger, then they stay straight. The inclusion of the 35.4-inch horizontal screen does necessitate some other changes to the interior, including the use of this squeal. Actually, hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's actually octagonal. Either way, it's not as easy to use as a round wheel. But if you didn't have it, you wouldn't be able to see the instrument cluster. So the thrones of the Avatar 1.2 are appropriately luxurious for a vehicle that's positioned as a GT. Trimmed in Nappa leather, that's optional by the way, they're also heated, cooled, and massaging. Driver and passenger also have adjustable leg rests. Not only that, both of them, not just the passenger, also the driver have zero gravity mode. Once you've put yourself in zero gravity mode, you can enjoy the 27-speaker surround sound system. Unlike the Avatar 1.1, which only has electronically operated doors in the front row, both the front and rear doors of the 1.2 are electronically operated, like so. One of the things that I was really worried about when I saw there was no rear window on this car was that the back seat was going to be a very cave-like place to spend time, kind of like the Hi-Fi Z. Having sat inside of it, I think it's actually okay. The reason being that while they don't have enough glass to give it a rear window, they do have enough to make this entire roof out of glass. This is also the intelligent glass, the kind that can change its opacity based on the intensity of the sunlight at that moment. The sunlight's pretty intense right now, which is why it's a pretty dark color. The rear seats of the Avatar 1.2 are, well, they're a bit of a give and take. When it comes to the comfort, they're actually quite nice. They've got really nice support, especially for your low back, something I don't feel a lot in the rear seats of many cars, even ones as expensive as this. Also, legroom, obviously with a wheelbase of over 3 meters, is really very copious. And even with this glass roof, I still have tons of headroom. Those are the good things. The bad things include, 1, there is no controls for the media or air conditioning from back here. Competitors like the ET7 do have those controls. They would have them there on the back of the center console. This one doesn't have it really anywhere at all. Also, down here, only one USB charging port. Now, I know I complain about this a lot, sometimes on cars much cheaper than this one, but at this price point, you really ought to have 2, and they ought to be somewhere more convenient. The Avatar 1.2 uses the same Huawei Inside Driver Assistance System as the Avatar 1.1 SUV, at least the same hardware, but it's said to have some upgrades with regards to the software.
For a more extensive look at the Huawei Inside system, be sure to check out our review of the Avatar 1.1 from earlier this year.
One obvious area of improvement for this current system is the fact that it no longer requires high-definition mapping in order to operate. The Avatar 1.1, when we drove it in the city of Chongqing, was operating using a high-definition map, so it was limited to certain areas of China. That's no longer true of this system. This thing can operate absolutely anywhere. In terms of the actual performance of this system during this Tuesday morning traffic here in the city of Kunming, as well as on the highways, I really don't have very many complaints. The way that it brakes, the way that it turns, the way that it changes lanes, even the way that it reacts to pedestrians and scooters and motorcycles and all these things, these objects, it performs very well.
Huawei Inside performed better than other systems, such as XNGP from Xpeng in terms of driving, but when it comes to driver monitoring, it's too lax. It doesn't monitor your eye line, and even the reminders to keep your hands on the steering wheel seemed few and far between. That makes it more user-friendly, but it also makes it easier for the system to be abused, and therefore less safe.
The Avatar 1.2 uses the same powertrain options as the 1.1 SUV. That means anywhere from 230 kilowatts from a rear-mounted electric motor, or 425 kilowatts from the dual motor version like this one. It also means a 0 to 100 kilometer per hour time anywhere from 6.7 all the way down to 3.9 seconds. Like I said, enough power to play tug of war with the moon.
The Avatar 1.2 combines adjustable air suspension with a double wishbone front and multi-link rear. The difference between the various suspension modes isn't terribly noticeable, and regardless of which one you choose, it lets in too much vibration over small imperfections. Interestingly, it was much better at absorbing large bumps and potholes. But while it isn't the most comfortable suspension, a brief trip around a cone course did show me that it handles with much more poise than you might expect from a big electric sedan. Steering was numb, but the 1.2 stayed composed during turn-in and braking, allowing me to enter corners with confidence.
Is it a performance sedan? No, I wouldn't go so far as to say that. They don't market it as such either. They call it a GT, a Grand Tour, and I think that is perfectly accurate. NVH is kept pretty well controlled, even at higher speeds. For example, I'm driving at around 100 kilometers per hour, about 62 miles per hour right now, and wind, tire, and motor whiner pretty well controlled. I'll take those separately, actually. Wind noise is probably the biggest weak point. This thing does not have a frame on the door, so without a physical object to block that wind, it's not going to be as quiet as a car with frames, a more traditional sedan styling. When it comes to the tire noise, it's pretty well controlled. These tires are specifically designed for silent ride over performance. Considering the role of this vehicle as a comfortable cruiser, I think that's perfectly acceptable. Finally, motor whine. I don't think I've heard a single hint of motor whine since I got into this car, so A+ there. I will end this video with a bit of good news for you, the consumer. Starting next year, the Avatar brand is going to be available outside of China, including in markets like Europe. That includes not just the Avatar 1.2 sedan, but also the Avatar 1.1 Coupe SUV.